What is up, everybody, and welcome back to the channel. I'm your host, Drew Hoover, and today we'll be discussing the quarterback position. We'll be discussing the quarterback's role in the NFL today and answer the question, are quarterbacks overrated or, in fact, underrated? And so remember to subscribe to your Average Joe Sports Network, and if you have any graphic design needs, go to Anthony Garcia. He is your man. www.anthonygarcia.com. His link will be in the description below. And this is a topic I've wanted to talk about for a long time, so let's get right into this. And so first off, it would be very arrogant to say that the quarterback position is not very valued. Every expert would agree that the quarterback position is the most important position in all of football. In fact, a lot of experts would say that the three most important positions are as follows: quarterback, someone to get after the quarterback, and someone to protect the quarterback. So pretty much the quarterback is the main objective here. And if you're a quarterback, you're more likely or not to be rewarded for your accomplishments. A quarterback is more likely or not to win the NFL MVP or Super Bowl MVP. Let's think back to last year in 2020. Aaron Rodgers won the MVP after passing for 4,299 yards and 48 touchdowns while also completing 70.7% of his passes. But some might argue that Derrick Henry was also deserving of that award. When you talk about when he rushed for 2,027 yards and rushed for 17 touchdowns, which, by the way, if you're not aware, rushing for over 2,000 yards is a great accomplishment in the NFL. And yet, this impressive season by Derrick Henry was overlooked by the NFL community. In Super Bowl 51, New England beat Atlanta in the NFL's first Super Bowl overtime, completing one of the biggest comebacks in NFL history. In the end, Tom Brady won the Super Bowl MVP after throwing for 466 yards and 2 TDs. But perhaps the honor should have been given to the running back, James White. He caught 14 passes for 110 yards and got the end zone 3 times, including the game winner in overtime, yet no credit has been given. And when you think of college, even in college football, a quarterback is more likely to win the Heisman Trophy, the award for the most outstanding player. Now, I would say this is probably more, maybe more diverse. When you talk about, again, last year's winner was Devontae Williams, the wide receiver from Alabama, who had over 18 yards in receiving and 23 touchdowns. But still, since 2010, 9 quarterbacks have won the Heisman. I'm going to list them off so you know I did my research. Cam Newton, RG3, Johnny Manziel, Jameis Winston, Marcus Mariota, Lamar Jackson, Baker Mayfield, Kyle Murray, and finally Joe Burrow, in that order. And you know what? The best thing about a quarterback is that you're also paid better for your efforts. Last year, Patrick Mahomes reached a 10-year contract with the Kansas City Chiefs worth over $450 million, $10 million in guaranteed money, $10 million in bonuses, and over $141 million in guaranteed money. So he'll be averaging $45 million a year for the next 10 years. So how can there even be a discussion about the quarterbacks being undervalued? How can any quarterback feel undervalued? Well, let's break down the quarterback position for a second. The fact that it's the most important position means it also comes with enormous responsibility. Quarterbacks, before they even enter the NFL, know that when they find a team, when they're drafted and become part of the team, they are immediately expected to be the leader of that team. Even if they end up being the youngest player on that team, coaches and front offices assume that the quarterback is going to take that responsibility and lead the rest of the franchise. And if you think that's unfair, every team also expects a quarterback to be ready for the NFL before they get there. The problem is college football and the NFL are two different games. You talk about different rules, different schemes, and when you truly think about it, college football isn't there to prepare the players for the NFL. And yet you have quarterbacks going into the facilities. They're given these entire playbooks, working out and practicing all day, and they come in with a mindset that pretty much the future of this entire team rests on his shoulders. And so when I think of the quarterbacks in this league, there's pretty much three outcomes here. The first one is the best outcome that a quarterback could ask for. Knowing well that it is a team sport, the coaches and front offices do within their power to gather pieces around that quarterback in order for that quarterback to succeed and do what he does best. An excellent example of this is Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs. The Chiefs have done an incredible job of gathering a team around Patrick Mahomes. You talk about having players like Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce. Remember in 2019 when Tyreek Hill was going through those allegations and there was a possibility that perhaps he wasn't even going to play in 2019. So what did the Chiefs do? They went ahead and drafted a McCall Hardman, the wide receiver from Georgia, in the second round. Well, turns out he was cleared, but they still took the precautions in case Tyreek Hill wasn't there. Now they got two fast wide receivers. You talk about this last season. They lost the Super Bowl to the Buccaneers because there was a lot of injuries to the offensive line. As unbelievably gifted this quarterback is, Patrick Mahomes couldn't do it by himself. So what did they do this offseason? They gave the offense a complete makeover. They acquired five capable offensive linemen to pretty much guarantee that that kind of thing would not happen to Patrick Mahomes again. And helping Patrick Mahomes also means improving the defense. And after the 2019 AFC Championship game, when they lost to the New England Patriots, they fired defensive coordinator Bob Sutton and replaced him with Steve Spagnuolo. I always loved that hiring because after losing to the Patriots, they hired a defensive coordinator that was the defensive coordinator for the New York Giants when they beat the Patriots in the Super Bowl. So if you have to get to the Super Bowl, you got to go through the Patriots. Therefore, hiring a defensive coordinator that knows how to beat them. So the hiring of him and also signing of players like Tyrann Mathieu, the safety, really catapulted this team to a Super Bowl championship in Super Bowl 54. And so, man, they pretty much know what they're doing right there when it comes to building a team. And then there's the second scenario, the second outcome, and that is whether it's the lack of ability, resources, or effort, the organization isn't able to put together the pieces to make an adequate team. However, because of the quarterback being so talented and he's got excellent work ethic, that they managed to find success anyway. But, however, after many years of carrying the team, literally carrying the team, the quarterback feels unappreciated due to the lack of support from the franchise and starts to demand respect from his coaches and the front office. And this is a common wedge that we find between teams and quarterbacks in the NFL. And, sometimes with these kind of wedges, they can be hard to mend. In fact, there's so many examples of this. You got to start from the top, and that is Tom Brady. Tom Brady won 6 Super Bowls with the New England Patriots, but despite that, Tom didn't feel wanted or respected. He told Joe Montana, who's a Hall of Fame quarterback who played with the 49ers, but also his childhood hero, he talked with him during last year's Super Bowl in Super Bowl 54 that they would ask for his input, but they would completely ignore it. They didn't listen to his input. Tom Brady, over the years, has taken so many pay cuts from the New England Patriots so they could build this team, but yet he never saw it in his benefit. He kept asking for weapons, but he wasn't given any. So that was part of the frustration that Tom Brady had when he decided to leave and go to Tampa Bay. Obviously, They paid him better. They actually listened to what he said, including getting back Rob Gronkowski to come out of retirement, and 1 year won the Super Bowl. And speaking of that, while we're on the subject, Aaron Rodgers is now feeling the same way. I'm not going to try to get into too deep of a detail with this because I have an entirely different segment on him and the Packers. But I'll say this once and I'll say this again. The last time they drafted a weapon in the first round was 2002 when they drafted Javon Walker. Aaron Rodgers won Super Bowl 45 with the weapons he inherited from Brett Favre. Pretty much the only weapon that has made a significant impact was Devontae Adams, a second round pick. So, Aaron Rodgers has felt like he's had to carry this team to the postseason, and he's not the only one. Two more examples of that, Russell Wilson and Deshaun Watson. You talk about the only reason that their teams are even relevant is because of the quarterback play. They both have been sacked more than any other quarterbacks in the league. I mentioned in one of my videos that since 2018, Deshaun Watson has been sacked 155 times. You're pretty much averaging over 50 sacks a year, and yet these quarterbacks are still completing close to 70% of their passes with one of the worst offensive line, with some of the worst defenses, and taking their teams to the playoffs. Both these quarterbacks can make plays out of nothing, and they're the guys that when a play breaks down, they extend that play, and yet they don't get the respect they deserve from their own coaches. And finally, the final outcome, which I feel like is becoming more and more common, you have quarterbacks who have the talent and they work hard, but it obviously isn't enough to win games. So they wait for the organization to put that team together, but little do they realize that their clock is ticking. Unfortunately, the NFL is also a business. The quarterback can't do everything. He can't be on the defense. He can't catch the passes. But if he doesn't make something happen soon, they will move on to the next guy and see if the next guy can get the job done. Even if the organization doesn't do the quarterback any favors, doesn't help him or support him, the jobs of the coaches and general managers are on the line too. Therefore, patience is thin, and they demand quick and immediate results. An example of this is Sam Darnold and the New York Jets. And we have to go all the way back to 2018 on the NFL draft in the first round. And remember, people forget, Sam Darnold was in the conversation for the number 1 overall pick held by the Cleveland Browns. Obviously, he slid to the number 3 pick and he was drafted by the New York Jets. But it was interesting, on the night he was drafted, Tom McShay had some interesting to say about him. Obviously, when someone is picked, they go over the analysis of what they've read in the film and stuff over the past few months. So here's what he had to say about what was good about Sam Darnold. You give him time, he can maneuver within the pocket, great feet in the pocket, great down the field accuracy. So he obviously liked him, but then he also broke down his sophomore year. A lot of people were questioning, how did he have such a great freshman year but had a terrible sophomore year? He started to mention that he had 13 interceptions that year along with multiple fumbles, and he acknowledged that the offensive line had suffered injuries. Sam Darnold had lost 3 offensive linemen that year. Also, his number 1 weapon from his freshman year was Juju Smith-Schuster. And we all know that year, during Sam Darnold's sophomore year, he was playing for the Pittsburgh Steelers. So there was a lot of components there. And what he pretty much was saying was, if all this stuff hadn't happened to him, he would have been the number 1 overall pick. And honestly, Sam Darnold clearly had the talent, but with that year with USC, with the injuries and stuff, and people, going in the NFL, without that supporting cast, Donald struggled pretty much like any quarterback would under those circumstances. And the same showed in New York. And you know what? There were times when we saw Sam Darnold flash that arm talent, and we're like, wow, this guy could be a good quarterback. However, the Jets constantly failed to give him weapons and protection that he needed to succeed. You talk about his starters last year. They drafted Denzel Mims, but he was constantly injured. So his number one weapon, Jamison Crowder. Again, nothing against him. He's just not number one receiver talent. Probably not even number two talent. Honestly, at best, he's a slot receiver. His running back, whenever they had Le'Veon Bell, but then they let him go. So who was their top running back? Well, Michael Perrin. Again, nothing wrong. He was just a rookie, but man, they could not get the talent around him. And because he wasn't able to succeed, even though it wasn't his fault, they shipped him off to the Carolina Panthers, and they just now drafted Zach Wilson, the quarterback from BYU, with the number 2 overall pick. And there are quarterbacks like Sam Darnold that, who had the talent to win, but their teams didn't have the talent to win. And when a team doesn't win, the quarterbacks are the ones we usually blame. And it's ridiculous how impatient the NFL has become. They are so quick to move on to the next guy when really they already have a decent quarterback on their roster. I will throw in Jared Goff and Carson Wentz into the mix because these were two quarterbacks that were drafted, the first two quarterbacks drafted in the 2016 NFL draft. In fact, they were the first 2 picks. Goff to the Rams, Wentz to the Eagles, and both quarterbacks showed right away that they can be successful. Let's start with Carson Wentz. In 2017, the Eagles went 13-3 and won the NFC East. Now, obviously we know Carson Wentz tore his ACL, but in those 13 games that he played leading up to that injury, he passed for 3,296 yards and 33 TDs. People were talking about him possibly winning the NFL MVP. But obviously the ACL, then Nick Foles took over, and the Eagles ended that year winning Super Bowl 52. And a lot of people give credit to Nick Foles for stepping it up, but the Eagles wouldn't have gotten to where they're at without Carson Wentz. The next year, unfortunately, Carson Wentz got injured, and Nick Foles had to step it up yet again. But people forget, even though the Eagles were 5-6 leading up to his injury, Carson Wentz was having a good year. He passed for 3,074 yards and 21 touchdowns and was completing almost 70% of his passes leading up to that injury. But the only thing that people remember from that season was how Nick Foles took over for Carson Wentz yet again, and the Eagles won 4 of the last 5 games to clinch a playoff spot. And obviously, they ended up being the Bears the wild card and lost to the Saints in the division round. In the last 2 seasons, in 2019 and in 2020, he played all 16 games. In 2019, the Eagles went 9-7 and ended up winning the NFC East yet again. Lost to the Seattle Seahawks. And in 2020, out of the 11 starters for the offense at the beginning of the year, only 2 guys weren't injured. Only 2 guys were left healthy. Carson Wentz and Jason Kelce, the center. Everyone else was injured. Alshon Jeffrey, Deshaun Jackson, Miles Sanders, even Zach Ertz. They were all injured, and he had to carry that weight. Now, when everyone started to come back healthy, they were hoping to see that in the automatic success. But it didn't happen. And instead of being patient and waiting for things to get back into sync, they were quick to move on. And we all know what happened. Doug Peterson benched Carson Wentz, started playing Jalen Hurts, the rookie quarterback out of Oklahoma, and the rest is history. After the season, Doug Peterson is fired, and Carson Wentz is traded to the Indianapolis Colts, which obviously he's in a better situation, far better cast, and he's reunited with Frank Reich, head coach, his former quarterback coach. Now let's move on to Jared Goff. In 2018, the Rams also went 13-3 and also won their division. They won the NFC West, and they went all the way to Super Bowl 53 to face the Patriots. Obviously, they lost 13-3, but they still had a great season. Yes, they ended up missing the playoffs the following year in 2019, but they were still 9-7. And then last year, they finally won back the NFC West, and Jared Goff helped defeat their NFC West rivals, the Seattle Seahawks, in the wild card game. And even though they lost to the Packers the following week, Jared Goff and the Rams put up a heck of a fight. And yet, after all that Jared Goff has done, they traded him to the Detroit Lions in exchange for Matthew Stafford, an older quarterback. And both those quarterbacks were talented and successful quarterbacks. Both Carson Wentz and Jared Goff both took their teams to the Super Bowl, but their teams showed them no respect and tossed them aside like a pair of old shoes. And when you see stuff like this just shows that coaches and front offices lack the patience, the perseverance, the loyalty, and frankly, the compassion to grow and nurture a young quarterback. And when I think about all that stuff, it's like, what happened to guys like Pat Bowlen? If you don't know Pat Bowlen was the owner of the Denver Broncos, and obviously his quarterback was John Elway. In his 15 years, he took the Denver Broncos to the playoffs 10 times and the Super Bowl 5 times. And yes, he lost Super Bowls in 86, 87, and 89, but then finally towards the end of his career, he finished off with 2 Super Bowl championships in 98 and 99. Now, let's just imagine for a second that John Elway came into the NFL today. And let's just say, for argument's sake, I know the game has evolved in the last 20 years, but let's just say, for argument's sake, that John Elway's career starts unfolding the exact same way. Now, think about the Super Bowl losses. How long would John Elway have lasted in the NFL today? How much disappointment would a team go through before a team would be like, we got to move on from John Elway? And this is going to be an unpopular opinion, but I'm going to say it anyway. I guarantee you that after the first 1 or 2 Super Bowl losses, John Elway would have been out the door. And if you think that would not have happened to John Elway, then frankly, you're a little bit naive. So when I think about this, they stood by John Elway throughout the entire process, even when he lost all those Super Bowls. And when I think about when they finally won the Super Bowl, I think of when New Orleans won Super Bowl 44. They won it for the city of New Orleans, and at that time they were 5 years off from Hurricane Katrina. I think of when teams like the Philadelphia Eagles won the Super Bowl for franchises that hadn't even won the Super Bowl yet. You think of in Super Bowl 54 when the Kansas City Chiefs won the Super Bowl. Yes, it had been since 1970 since they won a Super Bowl, but I think it was mostly because they wanted to win it for Andy Reid, who's been head coaching since 1999, been coaching way earlier than that. So I feel like a lot were rooting for Andy Reid to win that Super Bowl. And then finally, when the Denver Broncos won Super Bowl 32 against the Green Bay Packers, Pat Bowlen lifted up the Vince Lombardi trophy and said, "This one's for John." See, teams don't have the patience like the Denver Broncos had with John Elway. They had faith. They believed in John Elway. And eventually, that faith paid off in 2 Super Bowls. If they had given up like most teams in the NFL do, they would have missed out on all that success that John Elway had. Now, I understand that sometimes faith doesn't always pay off. Look at Dan Marino. Like John Elway, he also took his team to the playoffs 10 times, but only showed up in 1 Super Bowl in 1985 and lost to Joe Montana and the 49ers in Super Bowl 19. Despite never winning a Super Bowl, though, he broke NFL records for passing yards and touchdowns, and he's still considered one of the best quarterbacks of all time. But again, let's throw him into the NFL today. Marino had a postseason record of 8-10. And a record like this would not sit well with NFL executives. But you got to give props to the Miami Dolphins, again, sticking with Dan Marino for 16 years until the day he retired, even though they never won a Super Bowl. Now that is loyalty. And things like that, honestly, when I think about the concept of that, faith like that requires that you see the future down the road. You got to be able to have a vision of what can be, and not only that, but be able to maintain it, keep it alive, no matter how bad or how long it gets. Honestly, the NFL would be better if it were run by men and women who were fans first and businessmen second. I mean, imagine you asking this question to Miami Dolphins fans. If you could trade Dan Marino and all the years he spent with the Dolphins for just one more Super Bowl, would you do it? Fans would look at me like I'm crazy. They wouldn't give up Dan Marino for all the money in the world, because football is more than a business. It's about relationships. It's about community. He never brought home a Vince Lombardi trophy, but he gave the memories that would last a lifetime. And I know I went off topic with this, but I just want to conclude with these thoughts. Are quarterbacks overrated or are they underrated? Yes, they are both. Quarterbacks are so highly valued that they are under the most pressure, and overvalued means overworked. And because they put so much work into it, that, sometimes we don't appreciate what they do. I'm frankly surprised how many men in this nation are willing to step up to the plate and take on the mantle of a quarterback with all the responsibility that he have. And, maybe it's because we've had guys like John Elway or Dan Marino that were just so talented and worked so hard. It's because of overachievers like that have set the standard for the quarterback position that is today. And so my final thoughts here are, I feel like NFL teams need to be more attentive and active to shape the teams to the point where it doesn't fall on one person. It doesn't fall on the shoulders of a quarterback. Because teams win championships. I know that's a cliche, I know that's cheesy, but that's true. NFL teams need to also learn patience. Because I can't tell you how many front office people, general managers, and coaches talk about long-term success. Well, newsflash. Long-term success does not come from immediate results. If you want to see the fruit of your labor, if you want to see the end results, then you can't be short-sighted. And I feel like having a business mindset does that. It's a business mindset that comes with the fear of failure, and with that fear of failure, it makes them worry about the present, linear focus. But if you're a true fan of the game, and building this team is not focused on the money, it's not focused on championships, when you're not worried about your job, true fans will let the love of the game drive the franchise. And when you get a group of people together, from the coaches to the players, the front office, that just love of the game, all of a sudden they inspire to greatness. Alright, and that has been it for this segment right here. Hopefully this was informative. Hopefully you enjoyed it. I know I said I was trying to make these videos shorter. I even tried to write it in a Word document. Turns out it was 6 pages and over 2,800 words long. But again, I have a lot to talk about. I feel like I could go on forever. But hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Don't forget to subscribe to Your Average Joes. Don't forget to share. And keep an eye out for future videos. I am going to make a video about the Packers and Aaron Rodgers and what's going on with their relationship. Can they resolve it? And have a good day, everybody.